see how this looks. I am live. That's really cool. I've never done that before. We'll see what sticks around here.
Turn back the phone.
Yeah. One sec over here. Doing Instagram over here. Go live, connecting. Live now. Cool. I hope I don't know if I'm connected to Wi-Fi. So yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I don't know if anyone's going to jump on that quick that they can hear me. Is anyone? Can everyone hear me? Yeah, that would be great if you just jump on Shine real quick. I want to make sure that the sound is sounding good. Yeah, that would be great. Does it sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah, good enough.
All right. Well, let's, I think we're good to get started here. So thanks everyone for coming out here tonight. My name is Dr. Michael Moeller, and I'm here at Shine Natural Medicine. Tonight, the main topic is going to be about testosterone. So my background as a naturopathic doctor and past life personal trainer, bodybuilder, I've always been just very interested in this topic in general. And throughout school and in my clinical practice, I just continue to see guys coming back with low testosterone. This is for a wide variety of reasons. So we're going to talk about those things tonight. What does testosterone do? Why are average levels dropping? And what we can do about it. So, but first off, I just want to give you kind of an example of one of a patient that I've seen. So this was about 3 or 4 months back. I had a gentleman named Mike come in, 48 years old. His main complaint was actually erectile dysfunction. So he was unable to get and maintain a good erection. He had very low libido. They're having sex a couple times a month with his wife, and it was causing a lot of stress for him and his partner. So, but as I started to dive into him, and I just asked him some basic naturopathic stuff, how's the energy? How are your other, biomarkers of your health? Started to find out. He was running on 2 to 3 Monster energy drinks a day, extremely fatigued. He didn't even have sex. He didn't have energy to have sex. So for him, sex was pretty much, what he told me was that sex is a chore for him at this point. So he was also unable to sleep deeply. So he was having a real hard time getting to sleep and staying asleep. Blood pressure was getting to about 145 over high 80, so somewhat uncontrolled. But he didn't have any motivation. He had no motivation, he didn't want to say that he was depressed or anxious, but just wasn't feeling like himself. That was actually one of the things he told me. I don't feel like myself. And one of the other things that was really hard for him to accept is that he was doing a lot of the things that you would think were right. He was working out. He was eating pretty clean as far as a low carb diet, not any processed foods. So he was doing everything right, but still wasn't getting the results that he was looking for. Strength-wise, he was really losing it in the gym. He was hardly able to squeeze out about 10 push-ups. Well, and unfortunately, to talk about testosterone tonight, it's actually starting to become what I think is somewhat of an epidemic. About 25% of men now over the age of 30. You heard that right. If you're 30, 31 years old, there's about a 25% chance that you have low testosterone. By the time you're 40, that's hitting 30%, and the number continues to rise. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So what do we do with Mike? Mike, we actually went with actual testosterone replacement therapy. And within 6 weeks, he came in ear to ear. Erections, he's like, Doc, I'm feeling good. I got energy. Me and the wife, things have never been better. We're getting at it a couple times a week now. The fatigue greatly reduced, wasn't doing any monsters, and still had the energy to go to the gym. Blood pressure was now coming down to a controlled spot. And he's basically like, Doc, I feel like I got my life back. He went from 10 push-ups to 40 in 6 weeks. Now, that's not everyone. He was, like I said, he was doing everything right. But when your testosterone is low, I don't even like telling my patients this, but they did a study once where guys had low testosterone, and they gave one group testosterone and they had another group work out. And the group that just got testosterone actually got better results, more muscle mass and lost belly fat. And I don't like using that as an excuse. We're still here to do all the things right, but it just lets you know if your hormones aren't balanced, you're fighting an uphill battle. And then at the end of the visit, he's like, Doc, I feel like I got my life back. I'm feeling really good about things. But I have a little bit of concern. I went to my primary care doctor, and they had said that this could be bad for my health. And so I reflected back to Mike. I said, Mike, how did you feel before? How do you feel now? and let's kind of look at your overall health. What do you think? He's like, well, I like going to the gym. I don't have as much stress with my wife because things are going well there, and I have better energy. My blood pressure is well controlled, and none of his other lab markers had come back off. So I said, I think it's pretty clear right now that you're in a better heart health. You have better heart health now than you did in the path that you were kind of going on. But there is a little bit of controversy in that area, and we'll talk about that in a second. So what does testosterone do? Testosterone is the hormone that basically turns boys into men. For men, women has some of the similar properties, but tonight we're going to be focusing more on guys. But again, think about an 18-year-old boy. They're starting to get really confident. The muscle mass is coming on, libidos, they're hiding erections because they're popping up so often. And it also, decreases fatigue, decreases belly fat, anxiety, erectile dysfunction, physical pain. I've had several guys get on testosterone and they've had years and years of physical pain, shoulder arthritis. I've even seen a guy with RA and the symptoms resolved with some testosterone. What's also very important to know, the research that's coming out now is really starting to show us that guys who have higher levels of testosterone, it protects them as they age from Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, and again, I already kind of talked about working on the arthritis. Here's just kind of a little picture here kind of showing you someone with high testosterone in the optimal range and someone that's kind of down in the dumps. Old grumpy man syndrome is what I kind of call that. Just like not feeling like themselves, depressed, they're beaten down. And unfortunately, when the testosterone goes down, you just see a plethora of other negative feedback loops that kind of kick in. So first, the erections aren't coming on, then you don't feel well, then you want to go to the gym, and then the confidence starts tumbling, and you're just in the spot of like, what can I do? And the thing that breaks my heart most is when guys come in and they're doing everything right. They're going to the gym, they're doing things, they're like, doc, what's going on? And I'm like, again, you're fighting an uphill battle with the testosterone. So testosterone, why do levels decrease? So there are pathologies like prolactinoma, which is like something that happens in your brain, testicular damage. But the reality of the situation, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but when you're 18, your testosterone is at its highest, somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200. And then as we age, the reality of the situation is by the time you get 81, you're somewhere down here around 250. Now, what's actually more important is your free testosterone, but we'll talk about that here in a second. But again, this is life. This is aging. And unfortunately, the medical care system now says, okay, you're a man. You just have to deal with the fact that as you age, you're going to get fat, you're going to lose your erections, you're going to lose your motivation, and that's kind of it. On top of that, there are just so many things in society right now that are crushing our testosterone levels. So heavy metal exposure has been shown to decrease testosterone. Low nutrients, if you don't have a good amount of zinc, magnesium, good amounts of fats, you won't be able to produce enough testosterone. And now we get into these areas again of what society's doing to us. Stress, okay, it releases cortisol. Cortisol literally shuts off your testosterone production. So, cortisol injections, most of the time that comes from stress. Blue light is a very interesting topic right now. When the sun rises up, it has more of a red tint. When it gets to its peak, it has a blue light to it. And then when it comes down, it's more red, and then it goes away. And for thousands of years, human circadian rhythm was tied into the sun. And so when we see a blue light, it literally shuts off the melatonin production in our body, and that helps us sleep. So what do you think happens when it's 9 o'clock at night and you turn on the TV and you get blasted with blue light? You're literally shutting off the production of melatonin, which is going to inhibit how deeply you sleep, which is going to, when is testosterone highest? In the morning after a good sleep. Growth hormone also goes up. So these blue lights are actually causing a lot of hormonal dysregulation. Being overweight, I already kind of talked about this, it's a negative feedback. So as we get overweight, the more fat we get, the more estrogen we produce, and it steals it from testosterone. High sugar diet has been shown. Single serving of, I think, 40 to 60 grams of sugar can lower testosterone by 20% instantly. Medications is one of the big ones now because all these medications, BP meds, opiates, alcohol, statins, all have the potential to lower your testosterone. We can talk about pesticides, glyphosate. There are studies, and they're in rats, and but they showed Leydig cells or what are in your testes, and they produce testosterone, and they've shown it to be toxic to your Leydig cells. And glyphosate's pretty much everywhere. I read an article about like natural organic honey. There's still a few parts per million even in organic products now. And then we have to deal also with xenoestrogens. BPA is one of the more popular ones that's found in plastics. What this does is when it's in your body, it mimics estrogen. Now, your brain reads how much estrogen and testosterone you have, and it actually works in the same part. So to bind onto the estrogen receptor will actually decrease your body's own ability to produce testosterone. So how bad have levels decreased in testosterone? And like I said, this is something that's kind of going around all society right now. There was a study done from 1988 to 2002. They had 60-year-old men, and the average level was, I believe, 550 milligrams per deciliter. And by 2002, that had dropped down to 450. So in 20 years, the average level dropped 20%. And we're now almost 20 years from then. So now probably the levels are even lower than that. And one of my favorite resources I have is this book called Testosterone Optimization Bible by Jay Campbell. I've had a couple conversations with a guy who really knows his stuff. He went through his own battle with low testosterone and kind of had to figure things out on himself. So he has it really great in layman's term, but it's also really good for doctors. Like the study I just talked about, he has quoted in this book. I think there's like 400 sites in this book. So for you, those out there who are more scientifically minded, sperm counts down. 50 years ago we're 100 million. Now we're looking at about 30. I'm trying to think, was it 30% of couples right now are having problems conceiving in the United States. What also happened with the reference range? So before 2016, the average reference range for testosterone was 350 to 1200. Now they kept measuring these levels and noticing the levels started dropping. So what did the medical system do? Let's just lower the level because everyone else is lower. So they're basically allowing for people who had low testosterone to now be considered normal. And unfortunately, when you look at the statistics of the United States, 70% of the men now are overweight, 40% obese. Most couples in the United States are happy to have sex, once or twice a month. So libido, you should want to have sex, people. You should want to have energy. You should want to, play with your kids. So again, there's a great time for Western medicine, but I think this is one area that Western medicine is significantly failing us. And it's obviously not only in men, but in the women as far as hormonal replacement therapy. And again, unfortunately, those levels are sick care levels. The Westernized medicine doesn't care unless it's broken or falling off, you're good to go. So I don't know how many guys I have come into me with all these symptoms who've seen multiple providers. And this actually ties back to one of my friends, and I'll change his name, Brandon. He's 33 years old, not feeling all that great, just had a little girl, no energy to play with her, going to the gym, not getting any results, losing all of his motivation to pretty much do anything. I said, hey, go in, get your testosterone tested. He goes in, gets his testosterone checked, and his levels come back at 245, which is low testosterone. Now, in order for insurance to cover it, though, you have to have 2 readings, and they have to be in a row to be considered to have low testosterone. So he goes back in 2 days, and guess what happens? He has a level of 255. And the doctor says, sorry, you don't have low testosterone. So first off, to me, that level is based on an 18 to an 81-year-old. That is an 81-year-old's testosterone. He's 33 years old. The guy can't play with his daughter at night because he doesn't have motivation. What's going on here, people? So what I see in my clinical practice is when guys start to get up to the 700 to 1100 range, they're really feeling their lights come back on. Feeling the energy, they're feeling the motivation, libido, all that good stuff. Now, again, what's also a little bit more important than your total testosterone, I've used that right now because it's easier for layman's term, but it's actually something called your free testosterone. So if you're working with a provider to work on your testosterone levels, you need to be looking at your free testosterone. So what is your free testosterone? Your free testosterone, basically, here's your bloodstream, and here's your testosterone. You can scoot the camera over here. I don't know if these guys can see me. Yeah. But as you can tell right here, the testosterone can easily go into the cell and do its thing, okay? But we have carrier molecules. We have what's called sex hormone binding globulin. We have albumin. We have cortisol binding hormone. And what that does is it binds up that testosterone and it makes it unable to get it into the cell. So you can have a decent amount of total testosterone, but if your sex hormone binding globulin and albumin are too high, it's not going to allow the testosterone to be free and do what it needs to do. And there's also a new emerging theory called testosterone resistance, much like insulin resistance, where you produce testosterone, but there's something wrong with the receptors, or the testosterone is just not acting like it should be. So how do I get these numbers? Okay, well, bad levels are low because we've had lots of long-term studies, and we can look back at people, and men whose testosterone are higher just have an overall decreased chance for death in general. Guys who have higher testosterone just live longer. Guys who are over 900, decreased chance for Alzheimer's. Over 700, decreased chance for diabetes and heart disease. Now, I can't say that there's any studies. This is one of the controversies with vitamin D, that if we raise your levels up, that it's going to be 100% preventative. But if we know that these guys are sitting in this area and they're having these results, to me, it only makes sense to get all of our guys this way. All right, Dr. Moeller, you've given us all this news. Like, how do we fix the problem? Okay, I go to the doctor and my testosterone levels are low. What do? Okay, you need to move to the country. You need to throw out your TV. You need to throw out your cell phone. You need to plant an organic garden. You need to get 9 hours of sleep every night, and you need to not be stressed and take afternoon naps. Okay, but the reality of the situation is we all got jobs. We all live in the city. We have to play the game. So those things I talked about earlier, we have to do our absolute best to try and avoid all those. So stress, staying away from stress. One of the really cool things to emerge are blue light blocking glasses. You can wear these to help actually block the blue light. I don't know if you guys can tell on my screen, but I have a program called F.LUX. And what Flux does is blocks that blue light. So if I have to get on my computer late at night, it blocks the blue light from happening. And I would even challenge you guys, next time that you think about this, like when you're in your room at night, say it's like 11 o'clock and you kind of get asleep and then you got to go into the bathroom and you turn that light on, just tap into your body and feel what that feels like. Because it's a shock. So again, staying away from blue lights. A lot of research now coming out about EMFs. I don't have a whole lot to back up my claims, but to me, it's just like you got electricity bombarding you at every moment anymore. You get in any room, you're going to get hit with Wi-Fi. And unfortunately, again, that's something that's happening to us. So we have to figure out ways to combat that. Like I said, move to the country, eat all organic, because staying away from the pesticides, staying away from plastic bottles. I always try and do metal stuff, staying away from plastics as much as possible. When you drink a bottle of water that's been sitting in a car, it's nice and warm. It can start leaching out all that plastic, so you can actually taste the plastic as it's going down. Obviously, and come on, half the stuff that I'm telling you, you already know. Like when you're drinking that water, you're like, it tastes like plastic. That's because it is. We know these things innately. Like, get sleep, eat better, do all these things, okay? But what are some actual other proven areas that can actually help get your testosterone up? High intensity interval training. So there's one herb, ashwagandha, 500 milligrams daily. Again, anything that I say tonight, I'm not giving out medical advice. We okay over there?
It's like paused. I don't know how to go back on.
Oh, that's not cool. Live video paused. Can you check on the live? Is YouTube still with me? 17 minutes. Hey, good catch though. It couldn't have been going too long.
No, it just happened. I wonder if I like end it and then start it again. Did it end?
Yeah. Just
okay.
Yeah.
I think we can just start over.
Yeah.
I'd start over. I'll have to blast you guys with all my energy. Because my testosterone's in.
So I'll just go back again. We'll start.
Yeah, just do another one. I want to see. How are we doing on YouTube? Hey, Joe. Sorry, we got blocked on the Instagram Live. Trying to work on it.
Here, try it.
We good now?
We're now live. Yes.
Okay, we're back. The powers that be, not listening to me will decrease your testosterone. Okay. So again, I was just talking about the natural things that have clinical research behind them. Ashwagandha, 500 milligrams twice a day. One of the problems with ashwagandha is it does have minor SSRI properties to it, which is good for balancing your mood. But again, I've had some friends and me personally, when I take ashwagandha is more of an herb for people who have a wired mind and tired body. And so if you're already tired, it can actually kind of bring your mood down a little bit. But it's really one of the only researched herbs that actually has scientific placebo-controlled trials showing that it works. And if you are deficient in zinc and selenium, that can also inhibit your testosterone production. One of the first things I have my patients do when they're here is do a micronutrient test and look at those levels. I talked about this a little bit already, lifestyle stuff. You got to make sure you're getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night. They did a study with guys on shift work, and they were getting about 6 hours of sleep for a week or two, and their testosterone dropped 20%. Staying away from the sugar. Good amounts of protein is always a good idea for balancing your blood sugar and your body. Your body's in a building state. One of the analogies I always use with guys is, especially with your hormones, is if you're building a city and you have only a certain amount of lumber, if it's cold and you only have a little bit of lumber, you're gonna use that lumber and you're gonna burn it as a fire to keep everything hot and keep it moving. If you have extra lumber, then you're gonna put on a city. So actually really low caloric diets will decrease your testosterone as well, because it's producing cortisol. I already talked about the supplements, working out. Just to kind of re-elaborate on that, you really want to do big exercises like deadlifts, squats, things that really, challenge the body. Now we'll get into a little bit of the science real quick. Testosterone here comes from cholesterol. So cholesterol is actually a good thing. Having too much cholesterol, too high of blood sugar, too high of blood pressure is what causes heart disease. That's again why you need to be working with a doctor monitoring these levels. But as you can tell, a lot of your hormones all come from cholesterol. Cortisol over here, progesterone, pregnenolone, estradiol. So how do we make testosterone? We get this signal from the brain, and the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary gland. That gets dropped off in the blood, goes down to our testes, and inside our testes is where we produce testosterone. That's why if you've ever had any testicular damage, you can also have low testosterone. I've had a couple gentlemen. One, like I said earlier, you can have pituitary adenoma, which can produce high amounts of prolactin, which shuts off your testosterone. And again, if you have testicular damage. Now, I bring this up because we already talked about the natural stuff, and I want to talk a little bit about the pharmaceutical interventions. And I am a naturopathic doctor, and I do my absolute best to be least invasive as possible. But again, looking at the reality of the situation, we have so many things that are bombarding our men right now, and they're in a hole. We got to pull them out. So I do my absolute best to meet the patient where they're at. But in a wide variety of the situations that I've been in now, I've seen pharmaceutical intervention be necessary. So when guys are younger, at 35, what we can basically do is use things like Clomid, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. And that's actually, it's an off-label use. Most of these are off-label uses. It was actually used for fertility in women. But what we saw is when we started giving it to men, I talked about this earlier, that the signal comes up to the brain. And basically what Clomid does is it shuts it off here. So then basically we get higher amounts of FSH and LH, and you get a higher amount of testosterone. You would think that it would increase estrogen, but I don't really see that a whole lot in men. And then HCG is an LH agonist. So what that means is it just mimics the signal from the brain. HCG is actually the hormone that's produced in women when they're pregnant, but it also mimics LH. So by giving guys HCG, it will help increase their testosterone. And younger guys, I prefer to use these pharmaceutical interventions. But again, if you have testicular damage, it's just not working. Okay. And again, one of the examples that I use with my patients, and this is cheat day. Cheat day, you're sitting in your kitchen or sitting in your living room watching TV. You got a chef in the kitchen. You say, hey, chef, can you bring me 10 pizzas? It's cheat day. Chef brings you 10 pizzas. We're all good here. Now, say the next day you ask for 10 and he brings you 5. Say, hey, I'm a little frustrated. Hey, bring me 15 this time. And then the chef comes again and he brings 5. And now you're short 20 pizzas. So you call in the pizza boy. Okay, that's what happens when we're going to be giving you actual testosterone. So what we were doing here with HCG and Clomid was basically turning up your oven more. Okay, but if your oven's not working and your chef's not working, you have to start replacing the testosterone from outside, giving it exogenous testosterone. But again, there are some things to think about when doing that. When we start giving testosterone exogenously, it will shut down all these pathways. So you can get shrinkage in your testes, and it will increase your sperm count. So again, make sure you make this decision with your doctor. That's one of the first things I talk to with my men. I'm like, hey, do you have kids? Do you want to keep having kids? And even so, there is there have been thoughts that guys being on testosterone will decrease their fertility. But to my understanding, I haven't heard from me or any of the providers that I've talked to that men who were fertile, got on testosterone, completely lost their fertility. There's a study that came out of Baylor. They were giving high amounts of ACG every other day. And from what I remember, every guy was able to get fertile again. So nothing to really scare you too much there. But again, I meet the patient where they're at. And this is why one of the things that gets a little frustrating with testosterone replacement, like most medicine, is that it gets very much cookie cutter approach. There's a lot of clinics out there who just throw guys on testosterone, give them a cookie cutter approach and say, see you later. When you really need to be checking in with the patient, you as a patient need to be seeing, like, how are you feeling, watching your blood pressure, watching fluid retention, watching your testes. My father got put on testosterone back home, and the physician there could have done a much better job of educating him what things to kind of look out for. But unfortunately, our medical model right now is, hey, 15 minutes in, 15, and you're out. Where with our visits here as naturopathic doctors, I'm spending at least, that first visit's at least an hour. And all of our follow-ups are a good half an hour, so we get to know people. So what do you do when you start actually needing testosterone replacement therapy? I personally use testosterone cypionate. There are other forms of testosterone, and these are what are called bioidentical. So testosterone has an ester group, goes into your body, and once it jumps into the bloodstream, it's basically the same thing as testosterone. Okay, so one of the main scares with hormone replacement therapy had to do with more so women using a form of estrogen that was derived from horse urine, and this was in the 70s and 80s, and it caused a lot of breast cancer. But the problem is that wasn't bioidentical, and there was, like, I think 18 different forms of estrogen in that, and we know in humans we have 3. So when you start plugging in these other molecules that aren't exactly what we're using, like, bioidentical means the keys are the same, but when you start popping in other keys that look kind of the same but not really, you're going to start having some side effects. And we don't know how those are going to interact. Things to consider when doing testosterone replacement therapy. Again, I'm very conservative. When guys start testosterone replacement therapy with me, I'm checking in with them in at least 6 weeks. I want to monitor their red blood cell count, monitor their prostate health, and monitor their estrogen. I can kind of jump into that. We don't really need to take about these guys. I personally, most cookie cutter approaches put guys straight on an anastrozole. And that was what I was taught. But the more research that I've done and the more I've seen in clinical practice, I stay away from this as much as possible. Estrogen is actually very beneficial for men. It's really good for their blood health, or for their blood, vascular health, for their blood vessels. It's good for their brain, and it does have impact on their libido. And one of the bigger things is actually bone health. So one of the problems I see is we put guys on testosterone, so they go out and they start lifting weights, and they're being more active and doing all these things. But we put them on this drug, this anastrozole. What this does is it prevents testosterone from being converted into estrogen. And we need estrogen as men. And what happens is when you block that off, you can get side effects. Low libido. What I hear from a lot of my guys when their estrogen's tanked is, like, they just don't feel connected to life. Like, you hear at the other end where guys get super moody and they're like, they get gynecomastia. But the reality of the situation is, if you're working with in my opinion, a good practitioner that can find out your dose, and if you increase the frequency of your testosterone injections, you'll have less side effects. This often over aromatization that often comes from when you're giving too much testosterone to someone at once. Finasteride, that's for DHT. That's one of the other, quote unquote, debatable whether or not it's how good and bad it is. Like most hormones, I think it just needs to be in an optimal spot. So kind of wrapping up here, we'll just real quickly just talking about some of the benefits, but to really drive home some points why testosterone is so important, especially for something like erectile dysfunction. Testosterone helps increase nitric oxide production. So basically it helps take your blood vessels and triple them in size. So having good blood vessel health, like, what's the number one killer of men? Heart disease. Heart disease is the number one killer of men. So, by giving better blood vessel health, testosterone also increases insulin sensitivity. I was reading a paper on how it would be a better first-line therapy than metformin. But obviously it's too controversial at this point. Testosterone can increase your red blood cell count. Erythrocytosis, okay? And a lot of people get kind of scared in this area as well. But people living in Denver have erythrocytosis all the time because of the low amounts of oxygen their body overcompensates. Lance Armstrong was taking erythropoietin to increase his red blood cells to help him perform better. Now, the concern with that is that when those numbers go up, your blood might be a little bit thicker and might get harder on the heart. I personally am very conservative, and I still have my patients donate blood twice a year just in case. But I do know some clinics and some practitioners that have guys overdonate blood, in my opinion, and they become anemic. So you actually be kind of careful with that. Again, individualized approach. No evidence for an increase in heart attack, MIs, or strokes. It's literally, there's nothing there. And again, it actually shows that there's a decreased chance for that. And there's no increase for clotting. It's another kind of thing. Let's talk about the boys. Okay, so this is one of the big topics. Testosterone, is it going to make my penis shrink? Actually, no. Everything I just talked about, better blood flow, can actually increase your penis size. Now, I'm not making any promises, but as we grow up, again, testosterone is what turns boys into men. So actually, testosterone is good for your penis. Now, I did talk about earlier, though, it can have some shrinkage in your testes because I kind of talked about that mechanism of shutting things off. I already kind of talked about this. Estrogen, it's good for you guys, okay? And if testosterone is going up, your estrogen should go up as well. You should still get it measured. You should still check in with your doctor. They should be running lab work on you at least twice a year. If you're doing testosterone replacement at least twice a year, I see most of my guys like 3 to 4 times as much as that. But I also like really developing a relationship, and I'm a guy, so estrogen, balance, motivation, libido. If too high, the thing you want to watch out for in guys is that you can get a little bit moody. I had a doctor friend of mine tell me a story about how one of his patients called him and he was crying. He's like, Doc. He's like, hey, what happened? Bob, what's going on, Bob? He's like, I saw it on the side of the road. It was on his dead. The bunny was dead. Bob. He's like, it's okay. That's kind of a sign. Hey, estrogen probably a little bit too high. But again, if you're working with like a naturopathic doctor, you can do stuff like DEM. DEM helps your body get rid of estrogen, doing things like fiber, calcium D-glucarate, all these things. There are natural methods to help keep your estrogen levels down. And unfortunately, if you get a cookie cutter approach, you're going to be putting on anastrozole. And one of the other things I talked about, the bone health, they've actually shown guys have poor DEXA scans. DEXA scans show the density of the bone. And when guys are on AIs for a long period of time, it gives them weaker bones. All right. Prostate, again, a very controversial area. Again, I have seen studies where guys have had prostate cancer and it's been treated in a multitude of ways and then went on testosterone replacement therapy and there was no increase in reoccurrence. Okay, that's just one study. But the problem is with prostate issues, 90% of men who hit the age of 80 will have some form of prostate issue. All of my patients, I put them on a product by Design Scale called Prostate Supreme. Give us a call. We can send those supplements to you. But that's the reality of the situation. So it's really hard to tell what effects anything's having on the prostate. Now, the one major controversial area is that a gentleman has prostate cancer or gets prostate cancer while he's on testosterone replacement therapy. There is a chance that it can increase how quickly it spreads. But we do know that men who have a higher testosterone level have a decreased chance for getting prostate cancer. So again, I have these conversations with my patients and I meet them where they're at and I educate them and say, what kind of life do you want to live and what risks there's risks and benefits on both ends. Just a real kind of quick thing, what I do here, talking about labs. You're on testosterone with a provider. Just make sure you're getting, this is something actually really important that I kind of skipped over, is that I don't treat labs, okay? So if a guy comes in and your testosterone's at X and we get it to Y and you still don't feel like your symptoms are gone, well, maybe we need to go a little bit higher. The same thing with estrogen. If you're feeling a certain way, some guys are going to feel good at this level, some guys are going to feel good at this level. So when my patients come in, I literally ask them, before we look at the labs, tell me how you feel. Oh, I feel great. And because earlier in my career, what I would do is I would say, hey, these are your levels. And the guy was at, say, 800, and he was feeling great. And the next time he came back at 750, he's like, oh, I can feel the 50 points. And I'm like, maybe you can. But, how were you feeling before? So again, don't get caught up in numbers. Get caught up in symptom resolution. Before we had testosterone levels to go by, 75 years ago, if someone presented with, like low thyroid, you didn't have a thyroid test. You just gave them thyroid. Like that was a no-brainer. And now we get so caught up in trying to fix people's numbers. Like guys come in and doctors will be like, oh, the level needs to go higher, the level needs to go lower. And the guy's like, I feel good. Or the levels are good and they feel bad. So again, every guy's individualized. But just some things you need to make sure you get tested: liver, kidney function, prolactin, thyroid, your hormonal precursors, cholesterol, progesterone. And then you should be checking in every month. And every practitioner kind of does things differently. I'll edit this along the way. just kind of depending on if we've had concerns that we kind of need to hammer there. So a lot of the things that I talked about, I just have some studies here at the end. Again, one of the biggest thing is, endogenous testosterone just decreases all cases of death, and cancer, all kinds of different things. So and those are just some studies there. So as you can tell, I think that there's a lot of things going on with the testosterone, and just looking at the statistics, every guy out there, we don't have the luxury of waiting till you're 65 or 70 to get your testosterone checked. I started measuring my testosterone in my early 20s, again, just so I knew where my levels were. And when they dropped, I knew that it was my testosterone that could possibly be to blame. Now, again, relating this back to, there's a lot of things that lower our testosterone, and the best we can do is the best we can do. So go out there and find a naturopathic doctor and, get your testosterone checked. So any questions? Is that a lot? A little too much? Was I blowing it out of the water? Blue lights. Any questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, what you got?
Come see you.
Oh yeah, you got to come and shine. Come in, call us up, see me, get your labs tested, and we'll make a game plan. All right. Thanks again for Shine. Thanks again for everyone that tuned in. Can we see? Is there any feedback on there?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
I see some stuff, but your camera angle's sideways. So maybe if I had some questions and stuff, we can address that tomorrow. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone.